Good morning, and thank you for joining today's webinar. I'd like to acknowledge that many of us are likely to be on the traditional lands of First Nation peoples, which includes those of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Island nations. We pay our respect to elders past, present and emerging, and celebrate the creativity, beliefs and the relationship with the land of these people, which includes Australia's first people, the world's oldest living culture. We recognise that sovereignty was never ceded, and it always was and always will be Aboriginal land. Well, welcome to today's seminar. I'm Ron Curry and I'm the CEO of the Interactive Games and Entertainment Association. We're here today sharing with you a huge moment in the Australian video game industry, and that's the Commonwealth Government's announcement that they'll be introducing a digital games tax offset with a raft of other complementary program that loudly and boldly announces that Australia is open for business. I'm lucky this morning to be able to introduce two distinguished guests, the Honourable Paul Fletcher MP, Minister for Communications, Urban Infrastructure, Cities and the Arts, and Mr. Peter Verwer, AO, the Prime Minister's Special Envoy for Global Business and Talent Attraction. Both of whom will be presenting immediately following the show reel, which has been pulled together by Austrade. So at the conclusion of the webinar, we will be holding a Q&A. So as we go along, if you have any questions, drop them in the Q&A function in Zoom and we'll address them at the end. So please enjoy the video, enjoy the presentations, and I'll speak to you at the other side.
I'm Paul Fletcher, Australia's Minister for Communications, Urban Infrastructure, Cities and the Arts. And I want to welcome you to this session, Australia Get Over Here, as part of the 2021 Games Connect Asia Pacific Conference. This is a very exciting time for the games sector in Australia. We have lots of enthusiastic gamers. We have a highly skilled, highly capable games sector. Over 1,200 people working in it, about $180 million a year of value generated. But even so, we're quite underdone as a nation when you compare Australia's size of its sector with the global sector, which is around $250 billion a year. Now, the Australian government believes very strongly that there is a great growth opportunity for the games sector in Australia, and we want to encourage inbound investment, and we're putting real money on the table to achieve that outcome with our 30% digital games tax offset that'll take effect from 1 July next year. What that'll mean is that for games with a development cost of over $500,000 Australian, essentially 30% of the budget in developing that game will be repaid to the developer through the tax system. It takes an existing set of rules that apply in film and will now extend them into the adjacent sector of games. And as part of this, we want to attract significant inbound investment, we want to bring talented people in, and we want to see Australia increase in size as a producer of digital games to match the vigorous interest in consuming digital games, which is certainly a feature of Australia. So can I thank everybody who's participating in this webinar. I hope you find it productive and informative, and I hope that at least some of the people who participate will go on to make investment decisions, and who knows, maybe we'll see you in Sydney or Melbourne or Brisbane or other parts of Australia before too long.
Thanks, Ron, and good evening to Minister Fletcher and all attending this special event. I'm Peter Verwer, the Prime Minister's Special Envoy for Global Business and Talent Attraction, and I head a task force that aims to help accelerate Australia's capacity, its muscle power in future-facing industries, sciences and technologies. The Australian government sees the digital games sector as an iconic industry of the future. First, it's the world's biggest entertainment industry. Secondly, technological advances in digital games help transform other vital sectors of our society, as diverse as healthcare or city building or AI, to name a few. Digital games operate at the heart of a createch revolution. So why Australia and why now? Australia's on the cusp of opening its borders to the world. Within a few short months, we'll not just be a vaccinated economy, but a rejuvenated one. The Australian government has launched bold strategies which form a new blueprint for growth and prosperity on a COVID-scarred planet. The government is encouraging a manufacturing renaissance driven by agtech, fintech, medtech, climate tech. It's building a space economy, strengthening cybersecurity, and accelerating a new energy transition. The golden thread which runs through these ambitious national goals is Australia's digital economy strategy, which includes digital games. As you know, the government has backed its commitment to your sector with a competitive federal tax offset, which several states are topping up. And as a task force, we're keen to work with you to build an unrivaled, world-class digital games ecosystem by helping you find partners, set up new businesses, or even help with visas. All these initiatives add up to a resounding invitation that says, if ever there was a time to get over here, it's now. Thank you.
So thanks, Peter, for your snapshot on why Australia and giving an overview of what's happening at the Commonwealth level for funding. What we'd like to do now is have a talk to a couple of the states in Australia and see what's happening there from a funding and activity point of view. So we've got Caroline Pitcher from Film Victoria, Grainne Brunsdon from Screen New South Wales, and Kate Croser from South Australian Film Corporation. So we might just start with Caroline. Just maybe give us a snapshot of who you are and what the game development looks like in Victoria.
Thanks so much, Ron, and welcome everyone. I hope you enjoy the full Games Week that we've got on offer here digitally from Melbourne. We're Film Victoria, strange name to be supporting digital games, but we have been supporting digital games for over 25 years, in particular supporting the independent games development sector, for which we've had some extraordinary success over a quarter of a century. We have an arcade, which is a location in which a lot of small games development hubs, so I'll start that part again. Small game developers can get together in a hub and collaborate. And we also provide two different types of incentives for the games industry. One is an international attraction fund for large games projects with a minimum spend being $500,000, and the second being a games development strand for independent Victorian games.
Excellent. We might flip over to New South Wales to get a bit of exciting news for us.
Yes, thank you, Ron. Well, excitingly for New South Wales, we've very recently got approval to launch our games incentive, digital games incentive, that we are starting to run from the 1st of October. This is obviously the Cool Club in here with Victoria and South Australia, and we hope to be able to support both New South Wales games companies, but also potentially attract some of those bigger games into New South Wales as well. It's a rebate on spend in New South Wales, eligible spend being over $500,000. Currently, New South Wales has about 18% of the Australian games industry here. We're obviously hoping to grow that significantly over coming years. And we're looking at what other kinds of support we can put in place to help independent games companies in New South Wales.
Excellent. So it sounds like it's game on for New South Wales.
Oh, a nice one, Ron.
Which is excellent. And Kate, South Australia.
Yes, so I'm representing the South Australian Film Corporation. So look, South Australia has a rapidly growing independent games industry with very high international impact, and it's backed by strong government support as well. Our state actually has the highest number of game development studios per capita, and it's growing. So IGEA's 2019-20 industry snapshot showed South Australia having 16% of the Australian game development studios being based here, and that was actually up 77% on the year before. So that just shows you the growth trajectory that we're on here in South Australia. We're also really well known internationally as a centre of excellence for post-production and visual effects work. So we've got companies based here like Rising Sun Pictures, Technicolors, Mr. X, and more. And that's really helped the growth of our games industry because of the natural crossover of skills and jobs across sectors, and also a strong focus on training and education that we have here in South Australia, especially around PDV and games. So here we're home to some of Australia's most exciting games studios, independent game studios like Mighty Kingdom, who are Australia's largest independent game developer, and won the 2019 Australian Studio of the Year award. Also Team Cherry, Foxy Games, who's a mobile game development studio, which has been named as one of South Australia's fastest growing companies. And we also have a really thriving emerging indie development scene as well here in South Australia.
I kind of can't tell you how happy it makes me to be hearing states pitch against each other. It's been a long time coming, but it's really exciting for the industry. And I guess, we've got the Commonwealth has introduced the DGTO, which we're talking about today as well. How do you see that interacting with the incentives that are in your states? Do you want to, I don't mind, Caroline, do you want to pick up that?
Yeah, sure. So we launched our Games Attraction Fund in November last year, which was prior to the federal government coming to the decision that this was an absolute no-brainer to introduce an incentive that was globally competitive for Australia to actually build out its games industry. We are full of incredible professional, creative and innovative game developing people here in the country. And I think before we say we pitch against each other, it's actually about uniting together to actually build a national industry that is going to be here for future generations, provide skilled jobs that are well paying for all Australians and that go on for generations. I think we're all here to agree to that. Yeah. That said, each state has a unique proposition in its own right. We have a different mix of different sectors and we're at different stages, and all of our incentives, I believe, complement the 30% offset that the federal government is giving. So all of us are providing up to 10% on top of the 30% offset that the federal government is giving. So that is a 40% opportunity for internationals to come and invest in our country. And that is a phenomenal offer from all governments combined.
I think we've seen how this has worked with the screen industry. We've got similar offsets. And again, as Caro said, we all work very closely on a lot of this, where federal government offers up to 30% offset. Whether that's for local producers or whether it's for international projects coming in and using Australia as a location and using the services and skills and companies that are based here. and the same for PDV. So we've been able to build very strong fields in that area. And hopefully it means the government has seen the results of that when you invest in a sector like this, the kinds of skills, the kinds of jobs, and the kinds of inward investment that come. That money's going to get spent somewhere in the world, and let's get it spent in Australia, and let's develop careers and fantastic projects here.
Yeah, that's definitely what's behind the South Australian government support of the game industry as well. So last year, the SAFC launched Australia's first video game development rebate. And we've actually been rolling this out over the last year, and feedback from industry is showing that the rebate's actually very easy to access and qualify for. So that's very pleasing to see the results of that after a year in. We've got the way the rebate operates is it's a 10% rebate on eligible costs to make a game in South Australia. So that can be accessed by Australian or international companies. And really it's a matter of you do the work here and you get the rebate. So we're really looking to increase investment in games and also to attract game studios to establish a base in South Australia. And, you know, that's going to lead to you know, a richer, I suppose, talent pool, the attraction and retention of talent in Australia and in South Australia, which is going to benefit the whole ecosystem. So as you can see, a very similar offering across the states, but a fantastic time to be looking at Australia to do more work and establish a base.
Correct. And look, I think Caroline said it right, you know, it's the sum of the whole that makes Australia such an attractive place to be, and it's great, you know, this industry where it's us versus the world, you know, it's that collective thought about, you know, it's about selling Australia and what we can do here, and the talent that's here, and the talent that we can attract. And on that, is there any notable projects or anything you'd like to mention that's happening in your states at the moment? Anyone like to jump in?
Well, I think we've got Mighty Kingdom, who I mentioned earlier, have released 3 new mobile games this year over the last 12 months, and they're performing really strongly. So Ava's Manor, Gabby's Dollhouse, and Peter Rabbit Run for Sony, which is based on the film Peter Rabbit 2. And we're really looking forward to what comes out of their new partnership as well with Canadian studio Eastside Games. Foxy Games Horse Riding Tales has been a huge success for that company. It attracts 1.5 million monthly players globally, and I know for a fact it's very popular in my household.
Excellent.
We've got The Sims Mobile, The Sims Free Play, Need for Speed, No Limits, and Real Racing all coming out of Electronic Arts at the moment, which is one of quite a few large-scale video games studios that we have based in Melbourne. Our Ones to Watch is an independent game that I was really pleased with, that's getting extraordinary reviews, which is called The Forgotten City. So do look that up. It's on multiple platforms. This is a game that we've supported since 2017 as it is developed and now has been released. So we've provided it 3 different grants as it develops, totaling around $160,000 for that one game, and it is certainly getting incredible reviews. We've had extraordinary history of success also with Crossy Roads, with Untitled Goose Game and Moving Out, and you know, looking forward to working on Moving Out too as well.
You're going to have to argue with New South Wales about moving out with a studio in each state.
Yes.
Well, I think that's the point.
Yeah.
Really
so that it's scalability, right? So now that Grainne has joined the team games for Australia, it actually means we've got much more scale to be able to take on larger packages of work and work with them, work across borders and achieve much better outcomes.
Yeah, and
very much the same way that film companies do. And, you know, PDV packages and that kind of thing, and animations often get shared across borders with different companies to come together then to make the whole. And it's great that games companies can do something similar.
Yeah, exactly. And look, there's some big things happening in New South Wales. We know there's some great inward investment happening right through every state. Companies like Sledgehammer Games, who, if we talk about being able to produce product across countries, collaborating on Call of Duty. So certainly, I think there's plenty of evidence, and we're talking a little bit later to a number of studios as well, just to talk through those things. So it's really exciting. There's plenty of happening. What if a publisher or a studio is interested in coming to Australia and talking to the States? What should they do? How should they approach each of you to talk about what's happening in your states?
Talk to me. Find me on the Screen New South Wales website, screen.nsw.gov.au, or on LinkedIn. You can find me by my name. We've also, if there are companies that are looking to come and set up here, we work with Investment New South Wales at a whole series of different ways that we can support companies to come and establish here. If it's about bringing a package of work here, talk to me and we can work through what that looks like and who you're working with and how you access the incentive.
Excellent. And Kate?
Look, very similar. People can reach out to me or to our production and development team at www.safilm.com.au. And similar to New South Wales, our state government's Department for Trade and Investment is very active in this space, and with the benefit of the 10% rebate behind us, is really looking to engage in those conversations with international companies looking to, place work or establish a base here. So now's the right time.
Excellent.
Same with us. You can find us at Film Victoria. I think another thing too is if your members, Ron, or people want to call yourself or contact IGEA, you can distribute those inquiries as well. Similarly, in terms of business attraction, we work with Invest Victoria hand in glove to attract businesses to base themselves from our state or from the City of Melbourne, and we work on the project attraction element of that. And also, I think the other thing to bring up too is there is a really complex and wide base of independent games developer businesses here that are incredibly talented and worth collaborating with, whether in partnerships or looking at acquisitions and other types of ways of doing business here in Australia.
That's great.
Ron, I'll just add one more thing, which is, and I'm sure I speak for Victoria and New South Wales here as well, but there's a very sophisticated training and education ecosystem as well that supports the new skills and new talent to come into the industry. So just as an example, here in South Australia, we've got the Academy for Interactive Entertainment. We've also got UniSA, who are partnering with industries such as Rising Sun Pictures and Epic Games. And we also have Flinders University partnering with CDW Studios. So there's a big focus on the institutions partnering with industry to make sure that graduates are coming out and they're ready for work and they're ready to step straight into the production pipeline.
Yeah, and that's incredibly important. Thank you, Kate, for mentioning that. And I know it's true across all the states, so that's great.
We do work collaboratively to bring in senior talent as well on an expedited visa process. So we work with the federal government in that as well, because we understand with more projects, with more growth, a strain, does hit the talent base. We've got extraordinarily talented people here, but we're also always welcoming people from around the world to come and have a great career and live in Australia as well.
Excellent, thanks. What we're going to do is we will drop, everyone who wants to have a look in the chat, we've dropped all those contact details on the chat as we're going, so you can check them there, or again, as Caroline said, you can reach out to any of the team at IGEA and we can pass those contacts on. I just want to say thanks very much to Caroline, Grainne and Kate. That was very informative, very instructive, and we look forward to you getting lots of people knocking on the doors of your states looking to set up studios. So thank you.
Thanks, Ron.
Thanks, Ron.
I'm here today to give you a quick snapshot of the Australian game development industry. So just bear with me while I share my screen with you. Now, these are results from a survey that we undertook 12 months ago now. We have another one in the marketplace and we look forward to sharing those results with you in about November, hopefully. So quickly, what does the Australian game development industry look like? Last year we had about 1,250 employees, give or take, and the income generated was $185 million. Now that employee number was quite consistent from the previous year, but the growth in revenue had been significant. And, you know, based on what we're hearing now, we're expecting both of those figures to be much higher this year. Game development studios are dispersed all throughout Australia, and the concentration tends to be in Victoria, where you've got 40% of studios and over half the staff. We've also got studios in all of the other states. The other growth we've seen coming out of the states is predominantly in South Australia. Now, they also, both Victoria and South Australia, have state government support, and you can obviously see why both of those are growing. They've been fostering studios for quite some time. The studio makeup is quite broad. We're anchored by four, I guess, global names. So that's EA Fire Monkeys, Sledgehammer Games, Gameloft Brisbane, and Wargaming Sydney. But we've got a lot of medium-sized studios and independent studios as well that round that whole ecosystem out. The industry is pretty young here. So, you know, about half of our studios are less than 5 years old. The flip side of that, 1/5 of our studios are 10 years older or more. So that does show that whilst we've got a lot of up and coming studios, we've also got, I guess, a lot of maturity in the industry, a lot of experience in the industry, a lot that have stuck around after the global financial crisis as well, and rebuilt and re-established themselves, which is always, I think it's really important to have that in your market. The industry was certainly feeling very buoyant last year, and this was really before COVID took a hold as well, with about 67% of people planning to hire. We can vouch for that. We've never seen so many job ads in our lives here at IGEA. The industry is developing for many platforms, predominantly PC, Mac, closely followed by mobile. Mobile was what put Australia back on the map post the GFC, which is great. We've also got a lot of people dipping their toes in the console waters as well. And we've seen some big hits come that way as well, which you would have seen in the video that we showed a little bit earlier. Like all games companies, Australian game studios are developing for a global market. So most of their revenue is generated in overseas sales as well. And we've also got 78% of our studios developing their own IP. Many of you would have heard that games tended to be one of those successful industries through COVID, and you know, many people were subject to stay-at-home orders, and they turned to games for, you know, entertainment, enjoyment, and to stay connected. And I guess many in our industry were well positioned to take advantage of that global growth and demand for games. 62% of our respondents reported stable or increased revenue, and this was sort of earlier this year, which was encouraging, and also that continual need to hire, which we're seeing as well. So what COVID allowed with so many industries is the ability to work from home, and the games industry pivoted very quickly towards that. So, you know, they've proven that they're flexible, they're adaptable, and we know here in Australia that, you know, 60% of companies are planning to have a hybrid model, so work from home and some time in the office. Of those that are hiring, we've got the bulk looking for talent locally. We've got a lot hiring talent from interstate because they can now that they're working from home, but we've got 30% or 28% looking to bring in people from overseas. So that's really, really, really important that we can access those people and get those of you that are looking for jobs to come back to Australia. If you're curious about what's being made in Australia, I encourage you to attend the Australian Game Developer Awards tomorrow. It's on about the same time as this webinar, and we're broadcasting from our Twitch channel. So I'll pop that in the chat now. And this is going to give you a really good insight into what's being made locally, the breadth of games, the diversity of games, the types of studios. It's a really impressive list, and it really gives us a chance to celebrate the local industry, all that's being made here, plus the studios and people that are contributing so much to the local community. Now, just onto that, there's no way better for me to showcase the local community than to talk to some of our local game developers. So stay tuned for the next segment where we hear from the actual people in the hot seat what's happening here. Thank you. All right, so there's no better way to showcase the Australian game development industry than to speak to some of our great developers that we have on the ground here in Australia. So we've just got a small session now from around the grounds, so to speak. So today we're going to be talking with Joey Egger from Moos, Ben Lee from Blowfish Studios, Blake Mizzi from League of Geeks, and Dylan Miklashek from Gameloft. So I'm just going to go around in order of my screen. First up, Joey, can you tell us a little bit about Moos and yourself? That'd be really helpful.
Yeah, sure. So Moos is the family division of a bigger company called Two Bulls, and we make, we're like a family-focused organisation who makes lots of games for lots of media companies, mostly in the US, including PBS Kids, Disney, Sesame Workshop. But we also work with non-profit organisations and organisations that have positive impact outcomes. Most recently, we've been working with the Alana Madeline Foundation and Beyond Blue, which we really love. The bigger company started in 2009 and Moos started in 2012 when I jumped ship from Sesame Street in New York to Two Bulls in the New York office and started up the kids division. And we've been growing pretty slowly ever since.
So you're based in Melbourne. Roughly how many staff do you have, Joey?
At the moment, we've got between 20 and 25 people in the Moos team. And it's a mixture of producers, game designers, 2D, 3D artists, and a bunch of engineers who, between the lot of them, pretty much can build everything, which is great.
Excellent. Now, moving a little bit further north, Dylan. Dylan works for Gameloft Brisbane. If you could just tell us a little bit about your studio, Dylan, that'd be great.
You bet. So we are based in Brisbane, sunny Queensland. We are part of an international company called Gameloft, which is based in Paris. We have studios all over the world, probably about 12 to 15 of them now. And we're owned by a multi-billion-dollar company called Vivendi, so even much bigger than Gameloft. They used to own Universal Music, in fact, until it went public recently. Interestingly enough, Gameloft was a spin-off of Ubisoft about 20 years ago when it was set up to focus on mobile games. And our studio has been around for 7 years now. We started in 2014 and we've been developing mobile games ever since. The company as a whole is doing a bit into platforms as well. It's sort of gone in and out of platforms, and we're going back into it. Our studio has done 3 games so far. So it's Zombie Anarchy, Ballistic Baseball, and the Oregon Trail. Must not forget the Oregon Trail in the background. That we launched that one in April, and that's been a lot of fun, great success with Apple Arcade. So we're working with Apple Arcade these days, which is their subscription business. We're about 40 plus people and trying to move to 70 plus as quickly as possible in all disciplines. So, you know, your art, programming, design, producing, audio, and some marketing. So yeah, very exciting. We're starting up a second team now. So hence the move to 70 plus as quickly as possible.
Yeah, it's fairly consistent with what we're hearing from a lot of the industry. I think certainly since we've been at IGEA, we have never seen this much growth in employment, which is really, really, really encouraging. And that's around Australia. So heading south again, Blake's from League of Geeks and long-time advocate of the Australian games industry. Could you just run us through a bit of the League of Geeks story, please, Blake?
Yeah, of course. I won't give you the full long story, but we've just been celebrating our 10th anniversary.
Wow.
The studio's just past 10 years. We're located in Melbourne, as Raelene said. We're very proud members being down the Arcade, which is Australia's sort of premier co-working hub. It's been wonderful down there. We have roughly 40 people at the moment. Keep trying to get to 50, but it's very hard finding the talent at the moment in Melbourne, which I know a lot of studios will talk about. There is great talent out there, and studios are scaling up quickly. So there is talent. It's just hard to get them. But that's where we are right now. We have 2 exciting projects in development. I think also when we started our company about 10 years ago, started the studio, we most of the original crew were ex-game developers from other studios in Australia. So we've sort of came up, built a studio from that, and then been hiring up a lot of the great talent that's been generated from around the scene in the country.
Yeah, and like I touched on a little bit earlier, you know, Victoria is I guess the home of game development in Australia, and is home to a lot of great game developers and studios, but we are seeing an expansion happen around the country, and particularly with the pandemic as well. Many of you are hiring interstate staff at the moment as well, which has been really interesting development as well to watch from an IGEA perspective.
Yeah.
And Ben Lee from Blowfish, or Blowfish Animoca now. So Ben's got some good news for us, and Ben's from my hometown, Sydney. So over to you, Ben.
Cool. Yeah, hi. Yeah, I'm Ben from Blowfish Studios. I have started Blowfish Studios back in 2010, officially for the company with my co-founder, Aaron Grove. But we kind of started the company in 2008, just as a kind of a pairing. That he was over in LA and I was here in Sydney, and we produced our own iOS or mobile phone game, and that's kind of where we started. We were able to build out a game by ourselves, and that kind of proved to us that it was the golden age of self-publishing and being able to produce your own game with very limited resources. So yeah, we started in 2010. We were focused on mobile games at the start, and I guess over the years we haven't exactly, it's not that we've pivoted, but we've always gone and gone to the next kind of technology and just expanded on what we're doing. I think it just growing from myself and Aaron, just our desire just to everything's great, jump into everything. So we went from mobile phone games, we went into PC and then console, self-publishing on console games. We have we make games for other people as well as ourselves. And then we also jumped into publishing. So then we became a publisher for other developers, and so we part of the Apple Arcade as well. So that was cool in subscription games. And most recently, as Raelene said, so we were acquired by Animoca Brands, and so our latest pivot or expansion is now into blockchain gaming, which we will have a big kind of announcement there coming up the next couple of weeks. So look out for that. But yeah, we are in North Sydney. We started in 5 Dock and moved to North Sydney. Just been growing. We're up to 33 people now here in Australia. As Raelene said as well, we're starting to hire more outside of New South Wales. So we've got somebody in Brisbane, somebody in Victoria, plus, but still mostly Sydney. So that's been really key for us, because I think the Sydney game scene has been a bit smaller than the other states because of government, I guess, backing and just the way that the state is focused more, less on the creative industry side. But that's really changing now. So that's been really good. And I think for us, myself and Aaron, we weren't AAA, we weren't kind of game studios. We've been in the industry and always had an interest in it. I've always wanted to make games, and I was into 3D programming. But then we've always kind of hired from graduates and grown from trying to grow from the resources that we have locally, which is with the schools.
Yeah, and I think, Ben, and certainly Blake, you're pretty reflective of what I was talking about earlier. Is the Australian industry did fall into a bit of a slump post the GFC, but has certainly rebuilt itself, and your studio is a testament to that. The products you've made, the platforms you've developed are a really good example of how the industry has certainly taken off again. And I guess, what's interesting is, what we'd like to touch on tonight is what we think is unique about Australia. Now, Dylan, you've obviously come over from Canada at some point. So it'd be great to hear your perspective. I know you've been here for a while, but your perspective on the Australian games industry and what's unique about our market.
Yeah, I've been here since 2005 now, so I don't really remember what anything else was like. I certainly don't remember the cold, I can tell you that.
Except for when you play ice hockey.
Yeah, I think well, I had traveled here in 1994, and had gotten a taste of it there, and just thought it was fantastic. It was amazing. So when I went back, I thought, well, one day I want to get back there. And then I met somebody. I met my wife in Whistler, and then that was that. I knew eventually my path was going to end up here, and it's been fantastic. I think that it's such a beautiful country. The people are so genuine here. Canadians are very polite, but Aussies are very genuine, and I actually sort of personally appreciate that more than the politeness. Because when they're polite to you, you never know what's going on behind your back later. Anyway, no, Canadians are good too. But yeah, it's just such a safe and beautiful country. It's natural. I mean, the coastline here, I lived in LA for a while, and you look at the beaches. If you've ever been to the beach in Santa Monica or something, first you got to, watch what you step on. The water is like this green foaming brownness, it's pretty brutal. And then you go anywhere along the coastline in Australia, anywhere, and it's just stunning. It's so natural. But I think, it's just the biggest thing for me, I think, was the attitude, the priorities. I was actually born in the States, and it's just this whole live to work mentality. And in Australia, it's all about working to live. And I think that makes a better, happier people, and they're able to be creative. You can't be creative, you can't be amazing when you're under stress, and when it's, you're trying to climb a ladder, or you're trying to keep up with the Joneses, or as they like to say, you fake it till you make it. All that's just rubbish. It's all going to fall apart eventually, Whereas here it's just more natural. It's about working to live and balancing life, with everything you do. And for that, there's nowhere else in the world like Australia that I've been able to find with that kind of balance. And I don't think I'm ever going to leave. So much to my parents' chagrin.
We're happy to have you. Happy to have
Thank
you.
you. Thank you very much.
And Blake, you're pretty embedded in the community, and what have you found that's unique about the Australian community? And I know you've also been, I believe, hiring some internationals to come to the studio as well. So reversing that brain drain that happened after the GFC. So it'd be great if you could tell any of that story as well.
Absolutely. I was thinking all about that when Dylan was talking as well. And what you were saying is also unique to Australia, because we lost so many wonderful and really clever Australians, especially prior to the GFC. Australia was like very much a work for hire sort of games industry hub. We were doing all sort of the tier B games. I've done heaps of them for Warner Brothers and Nickelodeon. But a lot of the great talent that we were fostering in Australia, we're going off to other studios like Santa Monica and Sony and Ubisoft. We've had creative directors on Assassin's Creed games and gone off to work in all these great studios from across Sweden and Europe and everywhere. And it's funny, you go to these big studios around the world, and I've traveled most of them. You have friends everywhere. Australians are everywhere. So right now, what we're seeing, especially with the pandemic, is we're seeing this return to Australia. And Australia is seen as a place that you can have a great lifestyle. You don't have to crunch. You don't have to do crazy hours on a big AAA title. And also, like, AAA titles are fantastic. I love playing them too. But you also become a very small cog in a very big machine, where you can come back to an Australian studio still of size with ambition, and you can still produce something that you're really proud of, but you don't have to give up family and give up everything else for it. So we're seeing a lot of people, a lot of Australians who've had very senior positions in different studios all across the world returning back to Australia. And now there is Australian studios of size that are able to give them a home and give them those roles that they were enjoying overseas.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, that's what we're hearing as well. It's a first time in a long time there's been options for those looking to return. So it's not just one or two studios in one or two locations. It's spread out throughout the country.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And Joey, as somebody else that's just recently returned, not too recently, how are you finding Australia, certainly compared to New York, and the talent pools and just the creativity that's here?
Yeah, I've been delightfully surprised, and I feel really bad for saying that, but I was in New York working in games for 14 years. So at Sesame Workshop, and then at Moos, but based in New York, and I got really embedded in the children's media and digital industry around America. I went to all the conferences and everything. And working over there, everyone's really nice. It's a very nice community, but it's also very task-oriented, it's money-oriented. Everyone's got very loud opinions. It doesn't mean that they're not nice people, but everyone's kind of shouting over everyone else, and especially in New York. For the first like 6 months to a year of my time there, I was like so scared to speak, basically. So now I've come back to Melbourne, and I'm the loud person in the room, which is hilarious. But coming back to Australia and to Melbourne to work in the games industry here has been mind-blowing, because I had this, it's terrible to say, but I had this kind of thing where I was like, I'm coming back to Melbourne. It's not as big of a city. There's not as many opportunities for me to find, because one of my jobs is to like bring in work, find the clients. But what I've found has just shocked me, where myself and our team have never felt so rewarded with the types of Australian work that we've found. So for example, we've done a really great game prototype with APN Cape York, working with Indigenous kids in the Arukan region to look at how they can find a connection to country through gameplay. And you just can't get that anywhere else. That kind of perspective is just amazing. And the other thing I've found here is that the passion for indie games here and the support that Australia has for it is something that I haven't seen before. I worked in Toronto for a year back in 2007, and that was like in the big digital bubble where they had all these amazing tax credits and everything. And they had that indie stuff, but I've never seen the passion, the support that I've seen here, which I find really great. And one of the things I'd love to see for the indie developers and the people growing in the industry and trying to do their own games is focusing in on more support for teaching them business acumen and teaching them how to like run a studio and teaching them the practical money side of things. And I think that's, chatting to some people that I work with who used to work in indie games. So it's something I think that can actually be improved in the Melbourne and Australian game industry.
Yeah, well, we certainly hear that a lot as well. And I guess that's a really good segue to you, Ben, as well, because you've also published as well at Blowfish, haven't you? And done that very thing, helped the locals and internationals really get their games to market, haven't you?
Yes, yeah. We only started publishing about two or 3 years ago, and already we've published three titles that were produced locally here in Sydney. So we haven't actually picked up published a game outside of New South Wales, which is strange. But I think it's been very interesting. It's good because locally, because then the developers could come in before the pandemic, and they'd be in the same studio, and we'd be able to kind of become. It was kind of like a bit of a co-development. But yeah, and like you said, we do support lots of teams around the world though as well, just to help that. Part of our role is, like you're saying, is to help the indie studios, so they not have to worry too much about the managing of the business at that time, which now that I'm saying it doesn't sound that great, because you kind of want people to, I guess, to learn and get off that way. But I guess, removing some of that the stress of while they're building the game is useful, and that's what most indie game developers want to do. They get into it because that's what we did with Blowfish. We only got into it because we wanted to make games. Yes, and end up being creating a very successful studio, which was great, but we're here just to make games. So and
I think the market certainly appreciates your expertise. So So thanks everybody for your contribution. And as you can see, the Australian industry is growing. And our next segment is we're going to look at the assistance that is out there for those wanting to come back to Australia or those that want to establish a studio, and how we help you tackle some of those migration and visa issues. So thanks everybody for your time.
Hi, thanks, Raels, for that snapshot of the local devs scene. And it's a great segue into the next conversation, which I'm having with Sarah Rose from the Global Talent Task Force. So good morning, Sarah. Maybe you could just take a minute to introduce yourself and let the crowd know who you are.
Thanks, Ron. Hi, everyone. Yes, I am the Global Talent Officer that covers the European region, which also includes the UK and Israel. My role is to help promote the Global Talent Program, both from the business perspective and looking for talented individuals. So I work with prospective candidates in our region to talk to them about what we're offering and how I can help them.
Great, thanks. Look, we've been having this conversation throughout the webinar around, coming to Australia and the DGTO and how we're open for business. And one of my colleagues was saying to me that this offset is the car, but the talent is the petrol. So it's no matter what we do, we can't do it if we don't have the right people here. So I guess the question I've got to start with is there a pathway for talent to come to Australia?
Yeah, there is. And that's absolutely right. Now that everyone has sort of heard the why Australia, I'm here to talk about the how. And we've got a dedicated visa program that we are promoting, and it's called the Global Talent Independent Visa. And it's aimed at exceptional individuals who are the innovators, the disruptors, the creators. And the idea is that we're offering them express permanent pathways for visas into Australia, and that they will come, bring their skills and experience and help us grow that ecosystem.
That's excellent. So, so that's for talent, I guess, that resides, out of the country. What about expats who are keen to come back into the country? Is that easy for them?
So for permanent residents and Australian citizens, the door is open. We absolutely want people back. I appreciate there's some challenges at the moment with, flight availability, but certainly we want them back, and there's sort of nothing from a visa or immigration perspective stopping that. For people who are perhaps not quite at the pointy end in terms of the global talent pathway, there are other visa options available. And at the moment, during this COVID recovery period, we have a priority migration skilled occupation list that lists 44 occupations that the Australian government, working with industry, have determined are kind of critical skills gaps that we need to fill in order to help our economic recovery. And one of those occupations is called a multimedia specialist, which covers game developers and programmers. So those types of people holding those occupations will get priority visa processing at the moment, even through the COVID pandemic.
Okay, that's great. So one of the questions we have had from expats wanting to come home is the concern that perhaps if they have a partner or offspring that were not born in Australia, so not Australian citizens, is that an impediment?
No, not at all. So Australian citizens and permanent residents, they're immediate family members. So that's, your spouse and your children. They are also able to come to Australia. That's part of our exemption process.
Okay, well, that'll make a lot of people breathe a little bit easier. So how do you apply for these visas or the various visas?
Yeah, so the Global Talent Independent Visa, it's actually a two-step process. The first step in the process is an expression of interest. And basically we're asking people to put forward what their claims and expertise are. Why would they be of benefit to Australia? What's their prominence in the field? What can they contribute? And we look at that EOI and we kind of do a mini sort of assessment of what their skills and experience are and determine whether they're a good fit for this visa program. If they are, then they'll be invited to apply for the visa, and they'll get fast-tracked visa processing. And 90% of our visas are being processed in less than 90 days at the moment, which is really fantastic for a permanent visa to Australia. In order to apply, the best thing for people to do is reach out to myself or one of my other colleagues. We have global talent offices around the world. And we can talk to you about your suitability, give you a little bit of guidance, give you further sort of detail about the program. There are a couple of eligibility requirements. So the first one is that candidates need to demonstrate that they are exceptionally talented and that they have international recognition of what those skills and experience are. They need to show that they are prominent in their field, that they will have no difficulty in obtaining employment in Australia. And we also have what we call the Fair Work High Income Threshold. So you need to show that you can meet that threshold through your salary or through your total income. And at the moment, that's 158,500 Australian dollars per year. And then the final part of the eligibility criteria is needing a nominator. So you need to have someone who is an Australian citizen or permanent resident or an Australian organisation who can nominate you for this visa. They are not required to employ you. It's not about them offering you a job, but it's about them being able to attest to your skills and experience and the value that you would bring to Australia. So they would need to be in the same field as you and have knowledge of your, professional capabilities.
If you're a company that's engaged directly with the Global Talent Task Force, are there special or are there arrangements you can make through that group to help you process your visas and get, I guess, less friction in the application?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's part of my role. So we help both those individuals through that visa pathway that I just described, but also we will help businesses who have key staff that they perhaps need to bring to Australia. So we find that some businesses setting up will absolutely want to be hiring, Australian staff, but there will be some key positions that they perhaps need to bring from their overseas operations. So we can work with the organisation, the company, to support those visa applications. Again, we're offering fast-tracked processing. Those visa pathways are usually temporary though, and it might be sort of 18 months to get the business established and get sort of your hiring done. And then we have some other visa options which are up to 4 years of temporary kind of work rights here in Australia, and again with pathways towards permanent residency.
Okay, that's great. I mean, you thank you, very generous in offering the fact that you would allow people to contact you directly. So what we've done is we've dropped you an email address for your team in the chat. So if anybody needs it, or you can follow up with any of the IGEA team after the call. Sarah, thank you so much. It's really important that we understand that process. Talent is king. We know that, no matter what the business doesn't do it without the people. So thank you for that explanation. And we look forward to you being really busy with applications.
Yes, I look forward to it too. It's one of my favourite parts of the job is being able to speak to prospective candidates and sell Australia. It's an easy sell. So I feel very lucky and fortunate. It's a great job and great to talk to so many interesting people who have really achieved a lot.
So as you can see, Australia is poised to be an enviable place to make video games. And we know there's already companies investing here. They already see the potential. We've seen pretty great snapped up by Snap. We know that Animoca Brands has invested in Blowfish, Tantalus has been purchased by Keywords, and Nacon has invested in Big Ant. We know that Tencent and Team 17 are investing in local studios. We've seen IPOs from companies like Playside Studios and Mighty Kingdom. And Immutable is currently going through Series B funding. And we can't ignore the current studios that are continually expanding, like Sledgehammer Games, EA Fire Monkeys, and Wargaming. We have the talent, a complementary time zone, great federal and state level government support, effective migration levers, and definitely some of the best living conditions in the world. So it's pretty much a no-brainer. You need to get over here. So if you just give me a moment, we're going to jump over to the Q&A and we look forward to answering all your questions. Thanks for joining us today. Good morning. In case you missed my introduction earlier, I'm Ron Curry, I'm the CEO of IGEA. And Raelene said she doesn't need to introduce herself. She's our COO of of IGEA. So maybe Paul, you're next on my camera here.
Hi everyone, thanks Ron. My name is Paul Callahan. I'm the Manager of Games and Digital Content with Film Victoria, so working underneath Caroline from earlier.
Thanks. And Sanaldeep?
Hi Ron, I'm Sanaldeep Singh. I'm an Assistant Director in the Global Business and Talent Attraction Task Force, and I work with Susan Corby-Sierra, who's also on the line.
That might be a good way to drop to Susan.
Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. Yes, Global Business and Talent Attraction Task Force, we were basically set up as a response to COVID recovery to make sure that we're attracting the right businesses and the right talent to Australia, and I'm pleased to be leading the Digital Games Initiative. So if you're a digital games company, please feel free to reach out to us directly.
Thanks, Susan. And Jessie?
Yeah, hi all. My name is Jessie Kelly. I work with Sarah as part of the Europe, UK and Israel team. So pleased to be here today, primarily supporting the global talent part of the Global Business and Talent Attraction Task Force.
Thank you. Sarah?
Hi, you've all just seen me, but Sarah Rose, the Global Talent Officer based here in Europe. As Jessie said, I work with her and then very closely with Sanaldeep and Susan as part of that broader Global Business and Talent Attraction Task Force.
Thank you. And certainly, last but not least, is Jo.
Sorry, and potentially least technically able there. I'm Jo Sharp. I'm Director of Screen Industry Section in the Office for the Arts in Department of Infrastructure. We administer the current screen incentives and will be working with the ATO and administering the digital games tax offset.
Great, thank you. And I hope I haven't missed everybody. I think I've got everybody who's on the screen, but if I haven't, certainly jump in and let me know. I can't see you. I'm going to start off with a question that was actually already answered. Susan jumped into it, but just maybe everyone may not have seen the response. So the question was, who is eligible for the DGTO? So that's the Commonwealth level funding. And is it only for international investors? So I'm not sure whether Jo or Susan want to jump into that one.
I think Susan had popped an answer in there, but no, not just international, so domestic studios as well. An eligible business will be a company that's an Australian resident or a foreign resident but has a permanent establishment in Australia and an ABN. So that will be one of the eligibility requirements.
Okay. Jo, maybe you could just give us a very quick snapshot of where we are, because there's a couple of questions there about, I guess, the granularity of the fund and where we are along that process of understanding whether, there's stuff to be announced yet or is it still being worked on? Sorry, I don't know. Did you hear me then, Jo?
Sorry.
Yeah, no worries. I was just saying there's a few questions here about the granularity of the DGTO. I'm just wondering, whether we're at a point where we can talk through that yet, or is it still being worked on?
It's still being worked on at the moment. We've been undertaking a consultation process to learn more about the industry, also about other incentives internationally that people have had experiences with. The information that we've gained through the consultation process will provide government with information to make a decision on the final design. So I can certainly take questions away, but at the moment the details are still to be finalised.
Okay, thank you. Sarah, there's a question around visa, and I think you were quite comprehensive in your conversations around the visa opportunities. I also asked about how does that extend to education?
Sorry, the classic forgot to unmute. So we have a number of target sectors that we're looking at through the Global Talent Visa Program. Education is one of those target sectors. So I would encourage people to visit the website that was added in the chat, the Global Australia website, and have a look there. We're really after people who have new technologies or new advancements to come within that education sector as well. So there's more information on the website.
Thanks. Joe, I think this question's, comes back to, the devil in the detail, which you're still working through, and it's about the offset for games as a service studio. I'm guessing that we can't really answer that at the moment. Is that right?
That's right. I did see that one, and I thought a good question, and it again reflects the sort of different models that we've seen internationally. But yes, at the moment, still under consideration.
Thank you. There's a question here from Nick. Nick's actually asked a lot of good questions, so thanks, Nick. So what metrics are used for excellence? And will there be an opportunity for emerging talent to finish off their training in Australia and prove their credentials here? Does anyone want to tackle that?
I assume that's kind of in relation to the visas. This visa program specifically is for people who are at sort of the pointy end already. There is an element for kind of up and comers, but really you need to be able to prove your prominence, which is that, you have an internationally recognized reputation. Perhaps you have been working on projects internationally. Sometimes people might be a keynote speaker at an event, that sort of thing. So those are the types of ways that we will assess someone's prominence. Probably the best thing to do is to reach out to one of us global talent officers, and we can talk to you about your specific experience and how this program might fit, because it is really on a case-by-case basis, because we recognize that people have different, pathways, different levels of experience, and it's not a sort of one size fits all.
Okay. All right, thanks. I think we covered off Nick's question by his answer there. Nick was also inquiring whether, do any studios pivot to EdTech? And Nick, I don't know the full answer to that. I know we have a lot of studios in Australia who are very good at educational games and also serious games. We've got quite a number of them scattered throughout the country. EdTech, I can't answer directly. I don't know whether anyone else in the Q&A panel knows anything about the EdTech sector. No? Nick, certainly happy for you to reach out to us afterwards, and we can see what we can do to answer that question for you, so we're not leaving you hanging. Amelia had a question in the chat. International business want to know what compromises the qualifying expenditure for the DGTO. No, Amelia, there's no direct answer for that at the moment. As Joe was mentioning, it's still being worked on, so the framework of the DGTO, and we hope to have that soonish. That will be shared with us all so we can start commenting on it. And certainly for those who afterwards are curious how we're able to follow up on that, if you subscribe to the IGEA website, we'll be keeping everybody up to date on those issues as they come up. So we'll be posting blogs and going out to our membership and anyone who subscribes with some answers on that. There's a question here about, is New South Wales considering introducing direct investment grants for games? New South Wales aren't here, so maybe I could just say yes and commit them to it, but probably not the best. Look, I know New South Wales have probably been just a little bit behind the 8 ball in supporting games, and they made a big splash last week with their 10% offset. But I know they're certainly keen to look at other avenues of supporting game developers. So that's more the beginning than the end of what New South Wales is going to be doing. Does anyone else? Fran had a question. Some international companies considering investment are reluctant to commit to Australia until they have certainty. When will the details be unveiled? Okay. Do we know when, Joe?
Don't have a specific time frame at the moment. The legislation is tax legislation, so we will be working with Treasury on that drafting in the near future. At one stage of the process, the legislation process, is an exposure draft will be made available, which will provide people with an opportunity to look at that legislation. As I say, I don't have details on timing, but that's certainly a step that people can engage in at that time. And as you say, you'll keep your members informed as there's developments that can be that are concrete.
Thanks, Joe. Question here is specifically around New South Wales. Do we have a separate registration process or can we use our payroll tax registration? Very good question. The New South Wales rebate kicks off October 1, so this week, but at the moment we haven't actually seen any of the legislation or the framework around it, which we should be seeing within days. So again, if you keep an eye on our website or reach out to any of the IGEA team, we'll be able to get back to you with those details as soon as we see it. I guess there's also an opportunity for anyone on the panel that anything that came up during the session that you want to expand on or ask questions to the other panel members. Does anyone would like to add anything from the panels, the earlier panels?
Ron, it's Susan here. Just would like to encourage, whilst the details of the DGTO are still unknown, the intent is for the legislation to commence on the 1st of July 2022. And the commitment there is for a globally competitive tax offset. So I would be encouraging businesses not to wait and to reach out and to talk to us at the Global Business and Talent Attraction Task Force and to their Austrade offices in their markets, so that you can be on the front foot and work with us to ensure your seamless entry into Australia.
Lovely, thank you. Sharana asks, would any aspects of the upcoming legislation have an impact on VCs investors from outside Australia investing in? Would anyone like to check that? I'm not sure whether I actually understand the question, but would any aspects of the upcoming legislation have an impact on VCs and investors from outside Australia investing in? So I'm wondering, does that mean, are we limited? Will it be limited? Sorry, will they be excluded from the upcoming legislation?
I would add there, Ron, that the fact that the Australian government is committing and investing in the digital game sector is actually very positive for the VC and investors, because they know that the industry is going to take off, and the success we've had to date, in spite of not having that support, I think just shows that you should be looking closely at Australia, and I think it's going to be very positive for investors looking at what's happening in Australia and investing in the talent that's already here.
Thanks. Steve had a question around does a DGTO fall under existing legislation that operates the producer offset, or will it be a new act being written? Joe, it'll be a new piece of legislation, is that right?
It will be. It will fall within the same act, but it will be for the DGTO, not just some lines under the producer offset clauses, but the same tax act.
Same tax act, in its own section. So yeah, I'm reading into the question: is it just to tack on to producer offset, or is it bespoke?
No, it will reflect the consultation process and reflect that there is a difference in games development and screen production. So, as I say, the legislative drafting process will be led by Treasury, but I would expect that it will be its own section.
Okay, thank you. Well, looks like we've come to a natural end to the Q&A section, so happy if anyone drops any in. But while we've reached that point, I just want to say thank you for all the contributors this morning or tonight, to the panel here, and also to everyone who sat on one of the sessions previously. I know it was not as easy having to do it pre-recorded. It actually seems worse when you have to pre-record yourself, because you end up doing it 10 times rather than just once live. So thank you for that. Thank you for everyone who's participated and shown an interest this morning. I kept saying tonight, this morning. We'd like this to be the beginning of the conversation. So don't go away and think that was lovely. Please go away and start making contact, and whether it's with Susan's team or any of the states, with the immigration, reaching out to Jessie, who's based in Europe, reaching out to the IGEA team. We'd love to hear from all of you, and we'd love to keep this conversation going. This particular session, we will send you all a link to it probably tomorrow. And we'll also be putting it up on our website. So if you know anyone who hasn't been able to participate and would like to watch, we certainly welcome you sharing that with them. So thank you, everybody. I hope you have a fantastic day. Thank you for spending the start of it with us here in Australia. And all we need to say is you just need to get over here. So good morning.